Hello, my name is John. I work with Revolution Prep. I'd like to thank everybody for showing up today and allowing me to speak to you a little bit about the PSAT and also the upcoming SAT. And I'd like to thank the principal for allowing us, Revolution Prep, to hold our score back night. I'm going to go over a little bit about the PSAT and also the SAT, but before I get into that, I just wanted to introduce myself. My name is John. I graduated in 2004 from UCSB. I currently work at Revolution Prep. I'm a client relation manager. What my position is, as you probably know, we do private tutoring and also group courses for this SAT. So when parents call in to find out about the different programs that we have, I'm the person that goes over, all the options and answers any of the questions and tries to set up a game plan and gets everybody prepared for this fun test. So that being said, what we're going to cover tonight is we're going to go over why these tests actually matter, why standardized testing matters. I'm going to help you guys understand a little bit more about the PSAT and also the difference between the PSAT to the SAT. We're going to dig in a little bit more about the different tests that are out there with the ACT and also SAT subject test, ACT, and also AP classes. And then also a testing timeline to make sure that you're prepared come senior year, everything's done, and you're ready to go for early admissions. So first off, why does testing matter? The standardized testing is a major part of the college application process. I'd like to talk to you about a little bit why and then how it correlates into the college application process. So to be a strong candidate, to have a strong application, basically breaks down into three different sections. Now the first section that we have is a GPA. Now it's just not the GPA if it's a 2.2 or a 4.4. There's other things that factor in. Is it going to be, is the student taking AP classes? Is the student taking honors classes? Is there language classes that the student's taking? But if you comprise all these things, it does equal out to about 50% of the college application process. It's a huge chunk. Now what we've done is we actually added up on average how long students spend to accumulate at the end of the 4 years this huge chunk of the college application process, the GPA, the transcript. So if you add up all the time spent in school, you add up all the homework that was done, all the studying, the time spent in the library, study groups and whatnot, it worked out to about 8,000 hours. So in the college or in the high school career, a student on average is going to spend about 8,000 hours to come up with their GPA at the end of the 4 years. It's a huge chunk. Now the second part of this pie is kind of the other section. It's equates to about 15 to 20% of the college application process. And what this is the extracurricular activities. It's the clubs, it's if there's doing volunteer work, it's jobs. It's what makes the student unique on a high school campus. And in turn, colleges really do look for what's going to make about this student is unique that will correlate on to the college campus. So it is a very important part and definitely not to be overlooked. We added up all those hours together, and on average, you do spend about 1,000 hours accumulating, with all this volunteer work or jobs or clubs or sports. Works out to about 1,000 hours, and that equates to about 15 to 20% of the college application process. So the third part is, and again, this is the reason I'm here, is about the standardized testing. Now, standardized testing works out to about 25 to 30% of this college application process. It's a huge chunk. On average, can any of you guess how many hours that students, again, on average, spend to receive this, to prepare for this huge chunk of the college application process? It is wrong. On average, it's only about 10 hours. 10 hours of preparation for 25 to 30% of the college application process. There's no correlation there. And honestly, it does not make sense. What that equates to is buying, one of those big books, grabbing a couple practice tests, and running through it. That is on average what students actually spend preparing for such a huge chunk of the college application process. And I'd like to say, An SAT score alone cannot promise you to get into college, but a bad SAT score could definitely keep you out of some of the college that you're trying to get into. Okay, so that being said, what is a PSAT? So a PSAT, P is for practice, SAT is the actual test. So it's just a practice SAT. For the sophomores, it kind of gives them, a preview into the college application standard testing process. It just gives them, an idea of, where they're standing as a sophomore. For juniors, though, and I'll talk a little bit more about this later, and if you have any questions, I'll be here after to answer those questions. But for juniors, it could be a National Merit Scholar, which is an awesome thing. You can get some scholarships for that. You can also be put on an academic level list where colleges will actually start recruiting you academically wise, which is it's a great thing. And if you do have questions, I'll answer those after there. But otherwise, it is a way for students to take a look at kind of to figure out where they are currently, and then to figure out if they're going to do or need some preparation to make sure or ensure that they get the score that they're looking for to make sure they can get into the college that they're hoping for. Now, the PSAT is broken down into 5 different sections. There's a critical reading, there's a math, and a writing. There's 2 sections of the critical reading that were 25 minutes each. There was 2 sections, 25 minutes each in the math, and also there was 1 30-minute section in the writing. Add that together, it's 2 hours and 10 minutes. Add some breaks, and it's about a 2.5 hour test. Probably the longest test that you guys have taken so far, in your high school careers. Now, what's nice about being able to take this test is that you can kind of reflect on this. And if you can remember maybe back when you're sitting down and you're taking this test and you're an hour in, you look up at the clock and you still know that you have another hour after that, did you lose focus? Were you tired? Mental durability in this is a huge factor. Did you have enough time to finish all the sections? Did you finish the test and thought, that was great, I aced it, I'm good to go. It's a great way to kind of reflect, to figure out, where you were during the test. So, and it'll give you an idea of how you're going to be doing in this SAT as far as for, the preparation. So, to talk a little bit about now, besides the PSAT, what we have is broken down into kind of 2 different sections. We have section scores and we have total scores. So to break up, first off, is we're going to go into the section score. Now, if everybody can pull out the PSAT worksheet that you have in front of you, or that you're going to have in front of you. Now, there's 3 different sections on that. Now, this is a very detailed breakdown. So there's a critical reading, a math, a writing, and there's some numbers below that. For critical reading, our sample, he got a 50. Math was a 52, and writing was a 44. Now, the way that this is broken down is it's from a score from a 20 on up to an 80. So if you got a 20, that means you got your name right. Congratulations. If you got an 80, that means you aced it. That's awesome. It's a lot better than I did, when I was a junior. Now, for each section, they have what's called a score range and also a percentile range. Now, what the score range is if you took this test again with no preparation, you might do a little bit worse, you might do a little bit better. It depends on the day. It gives you an idea of where you're going to be without any preparation. So, on average, if you scored a 50, it's going to be about a 46 to 54. So pretty much anywhere in that score range if you took this test again with no preparation. And the rank on that is a 55%. So you actually scored, the sample test, little Jimmy, he scored 55% on average. Higher, 55% higher than the average student. Okay. Now the second part that we have on there was called a selection index. Now, if you add up all of these 3 scores together, if you add up the 50, the 52, and the 44, it equals a 146. And if you add up each section as a total out of possibly 80, 80 times 3 is going to be 240. So he had 146 out of 240, and he ranked within about the 47th percentile. On average, PSAT is usually about the 150 percentile range there. Now, and how it correlates again to this actually SAT. SAT is really similar, but it is longer, it's harder, and it starts off with an essay. So the next thing to kind of move on is we have what's called the skills breakdown, and this is the reason why you took this test. It's so what you have is this, you have a total score of, let's say, like 50 for the critical reading. So now what the skills breakdown is, it's going to actually break down each one of these sections. So rather than saying, okay, I got to study the whole thing because I want to increase my score, you can actually look in detail and find out what areas in this section do I need to focus on. For simple reasons, I'll use math. Say if you had a 56 in math, you broke it down and you're looking at the sections and you're like, okay, well, I got all the algebra questions correct. The geometry ones I was having a little bit of difficulty with. I know I need to focus on the geometry. Now, it is broken down in a couple of different ways, though. It's broken down when you go into the question by question section. It's broken down by first the number, the correct answer, the answer that and then the difficulty level. So, just because it was a geometry question doesn't mean that they're all have the same difficulty levels. There are different difficulty levels, and on the question by question section, you can actually look at the question if you got it right, and or if you got it wrong, and then the difficulty level. And one of the strategies that when we are preparing students for this is a lot of the times, say in a math section, if you got one of the questions wrong and it was a really high difficulty, then right after that you had a question that you got wrong that was easy. It's something that you should have gotten, that you've gotten previously. We know that maybe the student lost a little bit of focus, that they're so focused on the question that they didn't know, they weren't focusing on the question in hand and they got it wrong. So that's part of a little bit of the strategies, but we'll get into that a little bit later. Now again, going from the PSAT to the SAT, something to remind that the score is the score that you have, that 146 on ours, if you add a 0 onto yours, that's what your SAT score is going to be on average. I mean, of course, it's not 100% accurate, but on average, if you just add a 0 onto that, that's what your score is going to be. So if you had a 168, then your SAT score is going to be a 1680, okay? And then instead of out of 240, it's going to be out of a 2,400. And again, the thing to take into consideration, though, that the SAT is longer, it is harder, and it starts off before you even go to the multiple choices. You got a 30-minute essay. Now, a little bit about the SAT breakdown. It's broken into 10 different sections, and it rotates, which is interesting. So it goes critical reading, math, writing, critical reading, math, writing, critical reading, math, and then the first part was the essay. They also do include one experimental section, and that section is basically they're just trying out new material. It's actually not graded on the SAT. They want to know because they just want to keep changing and updating the SAT. They do have an experimental section, or experimental, but basically your score, there's 10 sections, 9 of them actually count, and it starts off with a 30-minute. And that, thank you.